Music doesn't suit you, dear. You have to suit the music. Vinyl Guru in the house. Here to talk to you today about what vinyl pressing best suits what you listen to. Let's dive in.
Vinyl Guru, Vinyl Guru. Vinyl Guru.
Every country had a various process in terms of the way that they executed vinyl records. So I will tell you the truth about each country, at least the major ones that people kind of are going to, the go-to ones here. So I will be concise and try to get as much out to you as I can. I've been wanting to do this video for a while, being as though it seems like some people are really going for certain records, not realizing that the kind of music that they listen to is not so fitting for that kind of press. So I'll walk you through. Okay, so the first up is gonna be the Japanese. The Japanese pressings are considered to be the audiophile, la da da, the jackets are amazing, the fidelity is amazing, da da da. That's a myth. The truth is this. Now, Japan, everything is quite tight-knit. So, that being said, everything was made by basically recyclable wood chips and plywood. And the apartments and the buildings and the way they constructed the houses and all that was all made out of plywood. Now, plywood is hollow. So, if you want music with somewhat ruckusy bass and nice fat low end, you're gonna be not only disturbing the neighbors, but disturbing half of the city, honey. So that's the thing about the Japanese. Not only are they quite polite creatures, but they have completely changed the way that they have listened to their music because of that. Now, they sucked the low end, which is my favorite. I love the rhythm section. That's where I like to live. So it quite sucks to get a real rocking record or a soul record or any music that has really great low end. I don't recommend you buy Japanese if you are into that kind of music. Now, that being said, there are certain styles of music that are a little bit better to get if you are going the Jap route. I definitely recommend, okay, this is what I don't recommend you get on Japanese. Definitely no. It was super flat sounding. Oh my goodness. Which sucks. I do quite love Zappa, but a record like this it's wonderful. It's wonderful on Japanese because that pop sound is already somewhat bright. So you're only just enhancing that texture that was already there. That being said, the way that they process their records is amazing. And that's a whole other thing that I will talk to closer to the end of the video, but let's keep it going. Oh, whoa, hold on. I actually totally forgot to talk about the Japanese jazz, okay? The Blue Note stuff, some of the Blue Note stuff on Japanese is really not that bad. It's an entirely different ballgame we're talking about here. But for the most part, the Japanese are actually coming to America, coming over here. They're all coming to the West to buy those Blue Notes, to buy all those impulses up. They don't listen to their own records. They've bamboozled us into thinking that their stuff is good when it's flat and mediocre, okay? It's not that great for somebody who likes a wide dynamic range. Now, another thing I wanted to say too before I, cut it loose with the Japanese is that this is just called an obi. Not an obi strip, but an obi. As it's already implying that it is a strip. An obi means strip in Japanese, so it's just an obi, dear. Obi. Let's get into US pressings. US pressings, they're great. They're just as good too, but here comes the truth when it comes to the US pressings. They're noisy sometimes. They're noisy. They're noisy because they don't always use virgin vinyl. You know, the thing is that there's only a finite amount of time that you can use those recyclable pellets and vinyl that it gets a bit dodged here. Doesn't really, it will sound like a campfire. Really. So as you can see, they're using that dirty dog vinyl to get away with pushing more product, you see? The quality control is not that efficient or even really readily there when you're using that recycled plastic, and it only, you know, it starts to leach out its good properties. So, not a good thing, dear. Not a good thing. Dirty dog fact number 2 about the US presses is that the US sometimes, more times than you'd like to think actually, will shell out those 180 gram reissues, but really the master is digital. So you're really buying an expensive CD, honey. It's really what it is. Selling you a whole fantasy. It's Disneyland for vinyl people. Dirty dog fact number 3 that those US Americans do sometimes is that they'll use the metal mother that has so surpassed its time of use, being, around 1,000 to 3,000 quality control point. So I get it. You're the pusher, man. Capitalism, but it can sometimes come at a cost, at a price indeed. To be saving your costs, it comes with a cost. See what I did there? Look, even though the US had noisy records and they weren't always pressed on virgin vinyl, I have to say that their EQing was a lot more pleasurable to my ear. A lot more than the Japanese EQing, which raising the treble and lowering the bass, lowering the low end, how dare you? You know how much that kills certain genres of music? It's just brutal. So when you're listening to, let's say, a great jazz record, it was a original US press of a great jazz record, you're gonna hear all that purring, darling, because the EQing on it is exceptional. That's the thing I always really appreciated about US pressings. So yes, jazz and rock and those kind of more full-ranged music are gonna be definitely beneficial in the US. Do you wanna know why those US pressings were sometimes so loud and noisy? Well, I'll tell you. Sometimes they used this anti-static compound in their vinyl, and that made it so loud and surface noisy. But they didn't also just use that, they sometimes even used reground up vinyl, and even with little bits of the record label mixed in there. Oh, you guys, come on. Now, let's get into those Europeans, honey. Ooh, those are the ones that really purr, to me at least, in my type of taste and caliber, because they really had a really interesting way that not only that they made their vinyl, but also just gorgeousness. I loved the range that I got from a German pressing. German, Dutch, and UK are probably my favorite go-to for quite a bit. But I'll tell you this though, when it comes to what the best press would be, honestly, generally the source of origin, in my opinion, is the best. You want to get a US act, get it from the US, because that's where the lacquer is made, the mothers, and all of that stuff is all out there. Is when they're making copies of it to send up and ship off internationally, it's not nearly going to be as good as the original source. So I do recommend, when getting import, make sure that that import act is kind of from there, or else it can be a little bit questionable. The quality control is a lot easier to maintain when it's in-house. Now for me, I generally like going to European pressings, but it also really, really depends on the era of music that you've listened to, honey. Because if you're listening to, like 50s and 60s stuff in America, that stuff is great. That is good sounding stuff. But once you start tickling into the 70s, that's when the quality control starts to get real dodgy real quick, honey. So that's when you run along over to get some European stuff. That stuff is really, to me, it's pretty consistently good. So what genres really work over there? Well, most, to be honest, because they embody that dynamic range so well. I just personally feel like it really, they really got it going on. So you can listen to anything that's full-bodied, you know? And things that are heavily in the low-end world, like hip-hop and all that, and hard rock and metal and that kind of thing, which is really, really quite rumbling in the guts. But honestly, for the most part, if it's really well pressed, you can tell and you can hear the bad stuff in there. You can really hear it all because it's bare boned and it's revealing it all to you. But if it's in disguise, upping this up and turning this down and shaking it all up, you're not really getting the full experience now, are you? Okay, let's recap. Now, what did we learn? 1, that wherever the original master tapes reside, analog master tapes, of course, wherever they reside is where one should buy them. So you wouldn't want to get a US Beatles. You'd probably be best getting a UK original version of the Beatles album. Same with getting an original US version of the Doors album instead of a UK. You got where I'm going with this? Gorgeous. Now the next point is going to be that the Japanese get the credit when it comes to the world of packaging and all of that. Their quality control on that thick stock brick of a cardboard paper that they use as a jacket is unbelievable. The way that they have their inserts, everything about them is beautiful. It's a full-on curation. It's museum-like art pieces, you know? So, I mean, for me, I don't really listen to a lot of Japanese vinyl, but when it comes to the world of CDs, that's where the Japanese really shine. They by the way, they look like mini LPs, but the Japanese CDs, exceptional. Now this is where they shined, in my opinion. First of all, if you wanna ever buy a collection from anybody, look at that. It's phenomenal. If you ever want to buy a collection from somebody, you buy it from a Japanese person because it'll have all the inserts so minty and beautiful. It's like immaculate. It's like they take so well care of everything that they have and own and do. I really love it. But yeah, they have all the inserts magically placed. Everything is there. Another point, the grass is always greener on the other side. The Americans always want the British vinyl. The Brits always want that American. Come on, you know what I mean. I mean, come on, it's like hot rods, right? The Brits always want those gorgeous Mavericks and Corvette Stingrays. And the Americans want those Bentleys, Rollses, and Aston Martins. Goes without saying, we all want what we can't have. And now the Europeans and the Japanese had a certain way of pressing their music. They used this cold pressing method, which was done on pressing music on a pre-formed platter, okay? And versus the Americans, what they did was using a mold injection, which required much less vinyl, which was way cheaper for them, but also created far more static charge, almost permanent static charge, which is why sometimes the import records are so much quieter and to have way less surface noise. They weren't stingy on the process of collaboration, okay? And the thing is you know what? Records are like people, okay? You can't judge them right away. You gotta meet them down the road, not judge them ahead of time. So that's the other thing too. Sometimes you gotta pay to play. And by paying to playing, well, you know what I mean. Sorry, honey. Sorry in advance. Now, there are so many exceptions. There are so many exceptions to this list of what I've said, okay? But I will say, though, that you'll never really know until you know, you know? What I mean is, I've played US pressings of Stone stuff for quite a long time before I ever sought out the UK stuff, and my gosh, eons apart, I have to say. By that I mean the Brits won, of course. But what I found interesting about that era of sound was that, you know, of course, the wonderful thing was to want to collect both, because one would have more bonus tracks than others, one would have different songs than others, so that whole thing was kind of interesting in itself. But of course, we're talking Sonics here, and again, stick to the motherland. Well, I hope you found this educating, entertaining, informating. Just go with it, honey. Just go with it. I hope that helped you along your journey now to discover and maybe even rediscover the music that you've loved and known. Takes a long time. Takes quite the long aged ear to really get there, but I hope that I can help you get there without having to put all that time into it. So speedo on your way, and definitely look at me, give me a wink, and toodaloo me, honey.